Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Education Notebook on News 12 Connecticut. I'm Amanda Bergen. Opening the pages of the notebook, we'll be joined by a local author who will talk about his personal struggles with drugs in his new book called An Officer and a Junkie. And later on, how sweet it is, we'll hear from a member of the Stanford Museum and Nature Center on a popular way to get maple syrup from trees. But first, we're going to learn more about the therapeutic benefits of music and poetry. With us now is a family therapist from Weston, Dr. Donald Cohen. He's also an author and a songwriter, but we want to talk about using your poetry in therapy, specifically with kids. How does that work? It sounds like kind of an alternative, innovative approach.
A lot of kids come in and they can't talk. They're very shy and they're repressed, and they feel they don't want to be in a clinical environment. So one way to bring them out is to find out where their passions and their creativity is. It's amazing how many kids write poetry. It's amazing how many kids want to either be songwriters or lyricists of some type of form. And I love bringing that out in the kids because poetry is a creative source for music, and it gives these kids a feeling that they're exploring their imagination.
Does it work at all age levels? Do they need to be of a certain age?
Remarkably, I have 10-year-old kids that write beautiful poetry. And now Amanda's writing her poetry and she's starting to see that there could be lyrics, because I rhyme a lot in my poetry, and a lot of these kids rhyme, but even if they don't rhyme, we can turn it into something that could look like a song. And most people don't realize that poetry is music. And
does it help them process their feelings? Is that where you're
Absolutely.
going with this?
Oh yeah,
with this
it opens
theory?
them up. Because that's the creative source. The creative source, music is a creative source, poetry is a creative source, and they start to feel empowered by it. They feel good about themselves. And yeah, they start to bring in a lot of their writing, and they start to associate. I ask them where this comes from in them, and they don't mind telling me where it comes from when it's through metaphor and through something creative and imaginative.
Is this an easier way for them to perhaps share their feelings with their parents rather than speaking outright, maybe face to face, handing them a piece of paper with a poem? Is it easier
That's
for
an
them?
interesting question. A lot of kids are very private. They don't want to share it with their parents because maybe they're worried about judgment, or it's their sacred world, and they feel comfortable doing it with me because they know that I do it as well. But I do encourage them to share it, and it's amazing how many parents don't realize that, God, I didn't know that he or she does that. So I encourage them to share it. It develops a respect and a sense of support between parent and child.
Great. All right. Well, Dr. Donald Cohen is staying with us, and we hope you will continue to as well as we continue with the Education Notebook. We'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back to the Education Notebook. We are examining the use of poetry and music as therapy with Weston family therapist Dr. Donald Cohen. In addition to his role as therapist, Dr. Cohen's also a songwriter and a member of the band The Give, a mix of jazz, countries, blues, kind of folk rock, right, Dr. Cohen?
I think folk rock is a good
folk
word.
rock. Well, we were talking before the break about how you use poetry in your therapy with kids, and you wanted to talk a little bit about documenting your life and the importance of that.
Well, with myself, it started 12 years ago, where a friend of mine said, you ought to write a poem, and I looked at them like they were crazy. I never thought of myself as a poet. And for 12 years, I'm just finishing a book now where I've documented. I tell the kids I'm working with and everybody, you should date your poetry because it shows the journey, it shows what you've gone through. And what I think is great is that I realized, I met a guy named John Saxon who's actually in the financial world. One night we were out for dinner with family, and he says, I can't write lyrics, and I said, I can't write music, and we got together from two different worlds. And for the last 5 years, we have been writing songs together, and we put a band together, and all of a sudden my poetry became music. And the most fun, it's amazing to go out and hear your lyrics that were just poems all of a sudden in a cafe being sung and played by a band. It's real. And so I tell kids, you never know what's going to happen. But document, date your poetry so you can see your journey. And I talk about everything that I've gone through, as well as you documenting what's going on in the world around you.
We're taking a listen to it right now. This is from the CD that's coming out?
This is the CD that just has come out on iTunes about 2 months ago. It's called The Give. It's our first CD, and it's very exciting. And I cannot believe that we're actually, kids, and I use that in my practice, my kids are downloading my music, and we talk about it, and then they want to share stuff that they want to do, and all of a sudden they think maybe they can do that too.
Great. I'm taking a look at the CD cover right now. Well, that must make you very cool in the eyes of your younger patients.
I think it does make them feel comfortable. You know, I think it's kids are home in music and in poetry, and yeah, I think that, like I said, there's a trust, and it takes away the wall between therapist and patient.
Are there similarities that you see between the poetry in your songs you've written and then the poetry you use with your kids in therapy?
How he inspired me to look at the world more as we're not all that different. One of the lyrics, the opening lyric in the song is "We're all citizens of Lebanon." And what Jared's book brings in Children of Jihad makes me feel good, because I did a lot of work with kids. I used to have a kids talk show here, as a matter of fact. Jared used to be a guest, and Jared used to call into my show, and I remember him as a little boy lying in bed, and here he is now doing Kids Are Talking all over the world, and basically linking youth with youth and youth, American youth, international youth, really trying to say that kids around the world and people around the world aren't all that different, and we should think not in terms of everybody being so different, but bring the universal connection. And I love that Jared is just trying to get to know what people are like over there, rather than judging them and getting into talking about politics and religion all the time. Just what do they read, what do they like to do for their social activities, and that's what Jared's book is about, just getting to know who they are, like what I try to do with the kids in the office. Locally.
Great. Well, you're both doing great work. Thanks so much for coming
on,
Dr. Cohen.
Me.
We're going to take it out now with some music from the song Lebanon you were just talking about. Let's take a listen to that. And coming up on the News 12 Connecticut Education Notebook, we'll hear from a Westport author on his new book, An Officer and a Junkie. But first, a look at some educational events taking place this week. If you'd like to post something on our calendar, or you have a story idea, give us a call at 203-750-5755. You can always also email us at news12ct@news12.com.